Hey everybody, I'm Lex and welcome to Words of This Life.
Running, even if I fall, I know I'll be safe in my skin. Hey, hey,
What's up? Welcome back. I am here for my second time in 1 week sharing a video with you. It's amazing. It is definitely a record for me, and maybe I will be able to keep up with that pace. We'll see. So today I'm going to be talking about my prison experience. And when you think about prison, whether you've been there or not, you can probably automatically come up with a list of many reasons that prison does suck and would suck, and you would be right on all of those counts. But today I'm going to be talking about my personal experience in prison, what I experienced in my 3 years there as my top 5 worst things about prison. And then at the end, I'm going to throw in a few things that I didn't actually mind as well. So let's get started. Coming in at number 5, the drama. So as you can imagine, when you put 70 women together in a room, or even 5 women or 10 women in a room together, they have all of these different personalities and backgrounds and upbringings and experiences and charges. You can imagine how that would be like the perfect storm of creating drama. And so whether it was gossip or cliques, the popular crowd, a lot of it felt like high school to me in a lot of ways, because it's prison is its own little world in there. And so you do develop that kind of unspoken caste system that exists in high school, or at least existed in my high school experience. So there was a lot of that. There was girlfriend drama. There was just relational tension constantly. It could have been girls fighting with each other about things or spreading rumors, people disrespecting the officers, and then everybody getting in trouble because a few women chose to be disrespectful. Whatever the case was, there was just a lot of that, and you never got a break from it. Coming in at number 4, the sounds. And let me explain something first. When I was in prison and before prison, and actually up until only a few short years ago, I had never heard of misophonia. I had no idea what it was. And if you don't know what it is, basically it's a hatred of certain sounds. And so it's when a person's brain will hear a specific sound. There can often be a trauma related to that sound, but there doesn't have to be. They will hear that sound and it will spark feelings of rage or of nausea sometimes, or irritability, or sadness. It's just like, it's a sensory thing. And so your brain just can't handle that sound for whatever reason. So I have had issues like that. And I'm learning more and more about this and seeing some kind of common threads about my childhood and the way that my brain worked and all of that. But my earliest memory of hearing a sound that made me so full of panic and rage that I just wanted to scream was when I was 6 years old. I remember it very vividly. And I didn't know that there was anything abnormal about that as a kid. And then as I got older, more of those things started to develop. And for a long time, I had a lot of shame about them. And then I learned what misophonia was. And I thought, okay, there is an explanation for this. So misophonia, hatred of certain sounds. In prison, there were 2 main things that triggered that for me. The first was being in the chow hall with a bunch of people in a room that was otherwise quiet, except that you could hear chewing. You could hear people eating and smacking and all of that. It was very, very difficult. And because I was on the youthful offender side of the prison, the YO program, that's, if you are not familiar with that term, it's just younger inmates. I think 24 was the cap on that. So you had to be under that when you were sentenced, and you ended up on one specific side of the prison, at least of the prison that I was at. There was a separate side for it. And so for us, we had a really short amount of time to eat, and we had to do it in silence. We were not allowed to talk. We had to just sit and kind of scarf down our food and in silence. And so that was really difficult because I could hear a lot of sounds that I did not like listening to, and I didn't even know how to express that or talk about it at the time. The other one, and actually this one was probably the worst one by far because it brought me to tears many, many times, was hearing other people's music. So at night when the lights would go out, when it was time for everybody to go to bed, you had this big open bay room with 70 beds in it, and a lot of the ladies had headphones and like Walkman things where we could just listen to radio stations. So I had one too, and I always kept mine turned down. I would even take off my headphones and hold it away from me to see if I could hear it from outside of that, because the sound of everybody else's headphones made me insane. And so I thought that was just a normal thing, and why isn't anybody else bothered by this? So I was just trying to be considerate, but nobody else felt that way. Nobody else felt like they needed to be considerate, because they would turn it up as loud as they could, and then it would just be this chaotic cluster of sounds that really made me feel like I was losing my mind on many occasions. I could hear the people in the beds next to me. I could hear the people above me. I could hear all throughout the room. I felt like I could hear people's music. I didn't know exactly what they were listening to, couldn't hear the words, but it was just the sound of the music, and so many different kinds of music coming together in one place at one time. It was chaotic. It was absolutely chaotic for my brain. And so on many occasions, I would put a pillow over my head. I would smash my headphones into my ear, just trying to drown out the other sounds. And I would cry myself to sleep. So misophonia is a real thing, and it can cause significant distress. So if you have a hatred of certain sounds and you've never known why, hopefully that would be helpful for you somehow. But yeah, that was number 4 for me, the sounds. Coming in at number 3, the heat. Oh dear, the heat. So keep in mind, I was in Florida for the entirety of my incarceration. And having been there for 3 years, we had a lot of hot seasons, especially considering that Florida is just basically one big hot season with like 2 weeks of cooler weather. So being in a big dorm with no air conditioning and one big fan that was placed at the front or the back of the dorm, and depending on where you were sleeping, it either hit you or it didn't hit you, that was miserable. It was so hot. You would get out of the shower and immediately feel like you needed to shower again. We had windows, but there wasn't really cross breeze. They did have heaters, so winters in Florida are pretty mild, but they did have heaters, because even with the mild Florida winters, it would have been really, really hard and probably some kind of legal liability for them to have us in a really cold building without any heat source. So we did have heat, but in the middle of summer, when it's over 100 degrees and it's 1,000,000% humidity, it was just like there's no escape from this at all. Working outside in the heat was hard as well, but I really feel like being trapped in that building when it was that hot was the worst part about the heat. Coming in at number 2, the officers. So I've talked a lot about the officers in some of my other videos, and just the way that they knew how to make you feel this big. A lot of that seemed like it was by design. They took every opportunity to make you feel like garbage and make you feel like you not only deserved to be in prison, but deserved to be dehumanized, deserved to be devalued, deserved to be talked down to in every conversation that you were having with an authoritarian figure. And so that was really difficult, especially in the times that they would make sexual comments. It was very hard to not feel like garbage. There were exceptions, of course. There were a couple of officers that were there during my 3 years that really stood out among the rest because they seemed to have compassion, but that was not the norm. So if you are a corrections officer and you are working with inmates, I hope that you'll hear this and just take it to heart that what you say and how you say it really is going to have an impact, especially on women who are coming from all sorts of broken backgrounds, sexual abuse and foster care systems, and getting involved with abusive relationships and drugs. Women from the sex industry, so many of us coming in there just already had such deep worthlessness issues, and being spoken to like you are worthless every day just confirms what you already believed about yourself. So if you're a CO, try a little bit of kindness. It's not going to work for all of the inmates. Some of them are still going to be terrible to you anyway, but just try. Try for me. Try for you, because it never hurts to be a little bit more kind. All right, coming in at number 1 on my top 5 worst things about prison list is the time. The time meaning that all you have is time. You obsess over when you get to go home. Will you get to go home by the date that you're supposed to go home? Or are they going to take days away from you? What is your family doing? What are your friends doing? Have they forgotten about you? You just have so much time, and it's hard not to obsess over that. You wake up and it's like Groundhog Day. Just knowing that you have to wake up another day in the same place and do the same things. I think you begin to adjust at some point, especially if you have a longer sentence and you're going to be there a while, but it's always in the back of your head, or it was always in the back of my mind, and it's hard not to count the days. So that's my top 5 worst things about prison, my personal list from my personal experiences. And then just to throw a few things in there that I actually did not mind. I did not mind the food. I know most people complain about prison food. Maybe it's just because I was in prison and there weren't a lot of other options. I did not have a lot of commissary money coming in. And so most of the time I was eating the food from the chow hall. I wasn't eating food from the commissary, where if you've watched a lot of prison experience videos, you've probably seen people talking about how to make cakes and honey bun cakes and burritos and all sorts of stuff that I got to eat with friends at times if they were making those things, but I did not typically have the money to make those things, so I was used to eating the chow hall food. My favorite meal was SOS. It was biscuits and gravy, and it was usually on Sunday mornings. The coffee cake was pretty baller too. Argue with me if you want to, but I loved the coffee cake and I loved the biscuits and gravy. Another thing that I didn't mind that I feel like was helpful for me was having a rigid schedule. So I don't know that I would have felt this at the time, because it was crazy and exhausting to have to get up at the same time every day and make your bed and stand at the foot of your bed at parade rest and wait for an officer to come and check your bed and make sure that it was up to par. And then we would march to the street and we would do some PT, and then we would march to breakfast and eat breakfast. We'd march back. We'd have our morning work assignment. We would then march to lunch and then march back from lunch, and then we'd have our afternoon assignment, and we'd march to dinner and march back from dinner. And, we had flag ceremonies and other things in there as well. And like I said, don't know that I would have said this at the time, but I'm glad that we had a schedule, because I think I would have gotten in a lot more trouble if I had been on the other side and did not have a schedule to follow every day. And another thing that I didn't mind was taking classes. When I got to prison, I got into a GED class and then took the test and passed it right away, and then worked as a teacher's aide helping other people study for the GED. And then once I was done with that, I took a web design class, which I remember literally nothing from. And I also took a Microsoft Office certification class, which I also remember zero of, but it was really cool to get to do that and to get to take some classes and to do something productive with the time. And then we also had, this wasn't exactly a course, it was more like, I don't know, like an intensive therapy sort of thing, but it was called Modality. Modality was a drug program. I definitely had a love-hate relationship with Modality, because I found it to be helpful, but it was also terrifying and crippling and very overwhelming and depressing to have to talk about a lot of the things that we talked about, which was the drugs that we did, our motivations, the things that we had done to other people because of our addiction. Facing all of that stuff was horrible, honestly. But it was a good thing in the sense that, it got some of the stuff out, even though out for me often looked like panic attacks and just extreme embarrassment and shame over telling the stories that I was telling and all of that. One final thing that I did not mind was being on the work squad. There were definitely aspects of it that I did not enjoy, but we got to leave the prison compound every day. And so I was only given the opportunity to do that after my life just drastically changed, my behavior drastically changed. And so I was given the privilege to be able to be on the work squad and leave the prison every day. And so we would leave, we would go out and pick up trash and dig in these ditches and do work along the sides of the roads. And we would have these massive weed whackers and just in massive ditches where 4 of us could line up next to each other and just tear up everything that was in there and run into water moccasins. So yeah, there were definitely aspects of it that I didn't like. But I think for me, that ended up being a really good thing because I was on that squad for 8 or 9 months-ish, something like that. And right before I left. So it was during the end of my time. And I think that it helped me to transition in a way because I left the prison every day and got to see okay, I can be outside of here and not crumble, because I had a lot of fear that even though my life had changed so drastically, I feared that I was going to get out and just immediately go running back to all of the things that I had done before. But to leave the prison every day and get to see things out in the real world, I think that was helpful for me in my transition. So, all right, that is it for today. That is my top 5 worst things about prison and a few things that I didn't mind. Thank you so much for watching. If you have been here before, thank you for coming back and for liking videos and for commenting and all of that. I appreciate the support. And if this is your first time here, I would be so grateful if you would like this video and subscribe. And as always, feel free to share this video or any other video that you feel could be helpful. And I hope to see everyone again next time on Words of This Life.